Hey there, my friends. Welcome to the Links to Messiah podcast, where we are passionate about teaching our children all about the connections between the Old and New Testament. I'm your host, Rachel Links Kushner, also known as the Chief Enthusiasm Officer of Links to Messiah, and I am so thrilled to have you join us today. Come along and discover how your family and children can grow in their faith as you discover the beautiful links that God reveals throughout Scripture about the history of His people and His Son, Jesus, our Messiah. Hello, welcome to my new friend from Instagram, Jenna Jill, the Wooded Classroom.
Hello, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm so happy to see you. Actually, when I said that, I said your Instagram handle wrong. It's the.wooded.classroom.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. We want to get that right because we want people to follow you because you offer a lot of really good stuff.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I'm really happy that you're here. So this is our first time meeting face to face, even though I do consider you a friend through Instagram. It's so
Right?
cool. But tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. I saw on your Instagram profile or handle or whatever it's called that you're a licensed play therapist.
I am.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That seems like a lifetime ago, but yes, before I got married at 30. And I thought that was great, but then I realized now I'm like, geez, I barely made it in the window, it feels. But I did a lot in my 20s, and I went to college young, and I graduated with a social work degree, and then I pursued an LCSW.
Yeah.
So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and then my specialty is child play therapy. And yeah, that has come in handy as a parent, but also I think I realized it's very different having a child one-on-one for an hour as opposed to being a mother.
Yes. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't
It's a
tell
whole different
anybody.
world.
I don't mention any.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Okay. Shh. Okay. Don't tell anybody what she does.
I put it on there,
I
but
know.
yeah, when I'm just at play groups, I don't say anything.
No, of course not. I will say years ago when our son was very small, he benefited a lot from play therapy.
That is
It's
so cool.
it was super, super helpful. I had never heard of it. I was like,
Yeah.
what? Play therapy? It sounded like a crazy idea, but it was really helpful for him.
I think that the premise of that is that children under 12 or so, they just aren't as communicative verbally. And so they can get it all done by playing. And I love playing. So it's a good match for me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So
Yeah.
tell me about your family.
I am married. I've been married for 10 years now, and we have two boys, King and Callan. So King is 8 years old, and Callan is 6. He just turned 6 a couple days ago.
Oh, nice. Okay. 8 and 6. Yeah. So you are in the thick of it.
Yeah. So they're actually just getting a little more independent, which I'm enjoying. And we homeschool this year. Callan joined us for homeschool. We had done some other things. I was homeschooled as a child until about junior high. And then I went into public school in junior high. But in my memory, almost would think I was entirely homeschooled. All the things we did and the places we went and all the activities I was introduced to, it really, in my memory, is like such a huge block.
Something.
Yeah. Like things that aren't really in public school, like pottery classes and, going to the redwoods, going to, some Washington, D.C., but maybe not in elementary. And we got to do a lot of things for homeschool. And I loved it. I loved it.
I think that's the beauty of it. The schedule is so flexible.
Yes.
And you get to choose the curriculum and what you're teaching your child. We love that. Love
Super
having
important
that
these days.
It really is.
Really
Yes,
is,
you
yeah.
aren't kidding.
Yeah.
Let's dive in. I know I did see that you guys celebrated Hanukkah. I saw your kids lighting the menorah. It was so cute.
Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful. Do you practice most of Jewish holidays?
I do.
Or some of the you do.
I do.
What started that?
Gosh, really, Johanna at Daily Bread Moms. We were in a really rough season. Our younger son, Callan, was born with cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I discovered that at 2 months old. And we went through really hard years, maybe 3 years of chemotherapy. And then, you'd think, oh, awesome, it's done. Life is better. But it's really the way it worked. It was a long season of very difficult things because then
Mm.
afterwards you have scans and then finances are totally overwhelming. And
Yeah.
and then we moved to stay with my parents to recover from that. And it was just a very hard season getting back to where we were when we started. And we just got there now. So he's sick. And,
Oh,
and
wow.
when I came across being able to listen to Torah portions and have other moms on there, that was life to me. And it was
Hmm.
at a time where we were in a really dark season.
Yeah.
So I started reading Torah portions, and my parents have been to Israel many times. My
Okay.
mom's always had a love of Israel. She
Mm.
instilled in me a lot of things. But
Yeah.
I have always, I don't know, I can't say that our church was a certain way, but my mom really saw Israel as God's people. There was no
Yeah.
replacement theology ever thought of in my home. And my mom was really the person teaching me.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
I've never
So
had that
you're
kind of idea.
so your mom had a love for Israel, a
Yeah.
love for the Jewish
Yes.
people, and of course that trickles down. You're
Right.
under her
Yes. I was homeschooled. My
schooling,
mom's a
right?
worship leader. She's worship leader. She puts a lot of things in there about Israel.
Yes.
And just she knew that. She had that. She had reconnected with that root. But
Yeah.
then I felt like I got even more connected through Johanna and reading the Torah portion and reading the
Yes.
Bible in a way that's along with the entire nation of Israel. We're all doing this together. That sense of togetherness was
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And
Mm.
then also the Bible I was reading would replace some of the words with the Hebrew word. And that
Ah.
was awesome. I loved that.
Got you curious. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I could start learning on a deeper level, really, other than memorizing Bible verses. This is a story that's being written over all of time. And
Yes,
I'm a part of it
exactly.
in this time period. I was born
That's
at this
right.
time for a reason. I wasn't born in Jesus's time. I wasn't born during the Holocaust. I was born right now and for a
Right.
reason. And just seeing that the scripture, I don't see it as Old and New Testament. To me, it's all a testament. The
Well
story
said.
of what God's doing.
That's
And
right.
yeah, so
Mhm.
seeing it that way, I think that has helped me. Like, there's more to it as well, but Callan's stuff really, the Lord spoke to me in that and really
Yeah.
used that. Like, I was having a really hard time. My son was suffering
Mhm.
so bad. And I've shared this with Johanna. I said, it was so crazy to me because at a time when I thought my son might die,
Mm.
the Lord was like, but would you still serve me if your son does die? And I was like, yes, because you are who you say you are, whether I have what I want or not. It's irrelevant. He's still who he is. So I'll
Right.
still serve you. And then
Wow.
later, once Callan was doing a little bit better, I really, this is a powerful word. And I know it came from God because it changed my entire life. I was out in the woods and I was thinking about how hard and how much I love my son. I would just do anything for my
Yes.
son.
Of
And he
course.
said to me, the way that you feel about your son, that's
Mm.
the way that I feel about Israel.
Mm.
And I was
Wow.
like, oh, then Israel is something way more than I realized. It
Uh,
is the passion of his heart. It is his
yeah.
great delight. And so it just shifted me completely. My son is doing well and
Yes.
he has healed my son. I get to keep my son and I just direct all of my love and my passion towards Israel.
Yeah.
This is God's
Wow.
passion.
Jenna, that story is so powerful. Goosebumps, got a little teary, trying not to break out in full sobs because the fact that you went through this excruciating
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
witnessing your child suffering for three,
Three
was it
years.
years?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years, and then 3 years of trying
Right.
to get to find a sense of normalcy. How he spoke to you when
Yeah.
you were in the woods, that's really powerful. And so I think it because your children, as you're homeschooling, are going to benefit
Yes.
from what you've learned
Right?
during that time. And I'm glad you mentioned Johanna and Daily Bread Moms because I know a
It's
lot
huge.
of people listen to that daily podcast. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do like how there's different readers, how they
Yeah.
share the reading. So you get different voices. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Can we jump in? I want to ask you a couple questions about like why you think teaching the Old Testament is important to your kids, because your kids are little. You said they're 6 and 8.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's important to teach them the Old Testament?
Okay, I thought this through and I'm really specific about it, actually. And I think it's the
Great.
same thing that my mom taught me. And it's that it's really challenging to see God in your life if you don't know his ways. So when you read the stories about lives over the course of different scripture,
Yeah.
you see the way that God operated in that whole life. Right now,
Right.
they don't know. Yosef doesn't know that he's going to become, he doesn't know that.
Right.
And we all can only see to the day that we're at. But when we can look at these lives, we see the testament of what God was doing. His plan and his design is so much greater than just us. And so for me, when I am teaching my children these stories, it demonstrates his ways, and his ways are not our ways. If we were to just think like men, it would almost be impossible to understand what's happening in our life, right? For instance, in my life, when I was 20, I went to the hospital. I had a surgeon cut the wrong part of me. And I was in the hospital. I almost died. I almost died in the hospital. And I had all these procedures. I had all these things, scans into these machines, and it was very scary for me. And people would tell me, you're going to be such an encouragement to people that are sick. And I thought, I'm already an encouragement to people that are sick.
Right.
It was way too much for that to be fruit of it.
Right. To be the reason.
Okay. But 10 years later, my son, God always makes it worth it to you. It wasn't worth it to me for a decade. I thought, why did I suffer like that? Who was prepared to be the mother for my son? Me. And why was I prepared? Because God prepared me. And I could walk him through the hospital and all these things, IVs and scans. I had them all. And I knew how to walk him through that without being traumatized, you know. And if God allowed this in my son's life, then he thinks this is what's needed to prepare him to be the man he's going to be.
Right.
I can't shrink back. So for me, when you see in the lives of Bible characters what God is like, then you know how he works, his ways, you know, his methods of operating. And you go, okay, if God does this, he does this.
Right.
So don't lose faith. You can't see the end yet, but it's coming. He will keep his word and he will follow through. When he gives Yosef a dream, what happened? The opposite happened. His brothers didn't bow down. They sold him as a slave. He became a slave.
They sure did. Yeah.
Right?
Off you go.
Then you think, okay, God gives you a word, and then the opposite happens in your life. And you go, okay, God does this though. So that's why I want to teach my kids that, so they know him.
God has been faithful, and why these crazy things happened all these years ago, and how he's using them currently. And that's exactly, as you described, the same as the Old Testament. Because we're able to see the bigger picture.
Right.
But can you imagine in those times, David and Goliath and Joseph, as you described? Joseph's probably, what is going on? Lord, I don't understand.
Right, Daniel? I stood up for you, but now
yes. I did not bow down, and now I'm here. What are you doing?
But those are his ways. He does that.
Those are his ways. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Shalom, shalom, my friends. If you are looking for a way to deepen your family's connection to the Sabbath while uncovering the rich tapestry of the Messianic prophecy, I have something for you. Introducing Shabbat Boxes, brought to you by Links to Messiah. As many of you know, Shabbat is Hebrew for Sabbath. We are commanded to keep the Sabbath holy. This beautifully curated box is filled with everything that you will need to create a meaningful Shabbat experience right in your own home. Every box includes a set of candles and wooden candlestick holders so that your kids can decorate and design their own candlestick holders. Additionally, each child will be able to make their very own challah cover. What is challah? Are you wondering that? Challah is a delicious bread. It's slightly sweet and it's enriched with eggs. It's braided before baking. I'm salivating thinking about it. It's a Shabbat tradition. Games and various arts and crafts activities are also included. But that's not all. You can dive into the thought-provoking study materials to explore the links between Shabbat traditions and the Messianic promise. It is perfect for families who are eager to honor the Sabbath while uncovering the profound significance of Jesus. You can go to linkstomessiah.com to purchase your Shabbat box. We're also going to have it listed in the show notes so you can just click right on there. And now, back to our conversation.
So tell me some of the feasts and things that you celebrate as a family.
So now that's been interesting for me because we live in a very small town in California. And there aren't really people around.
Okay.
There's not a congregation, which would be wonderful. So that's where my congregation has been being able to connect with these fellow believers online. We have a congregation we go to here, there's a love for Israel, but they're not celebrating feasts and they're not reading Torah portion. So I have to go on there and watch what other people are doing. And over these last several years, I try to figure it out. But what's been so precious to me is how Jesus is in all of these feasts.
Yes.
As soon as you start celebrating it, you're like, what? But is anybody explaining it?
Yeah.
You get all excited. It makes him
Of course.
so fresh. And so he's significant in every single feast. And that's important to me for my kids to be able to see. If they're not learning what all of Israel is doing, Jesus said, I came first for the Jew and then for the Gentile, right? So that's where that was his Bible. Torah was his Bible. He didn't have the Gospels. When I look at my Bible, actually, I'm going to do this for you. The Lord was showing this. So here's my Bible. And the Christian church divides it into the old and new. But for me, I started realizing, okay, the prophets point to someone and also the Gospels point to someone. And it makes like a heart like this, you see?
Oh, yes.
And the middle is it's all preaching to him.
Yes, Jenna. You know what? As you're saying that, it's reminding me of a conversation I had with a man named Matt Davis from the Jewish Road. Give him a follow on Instagram.
I'm gonna write that down.
You'll love his stuff. He was explaining to me the way he looks at it as they're like hyperlinks. So when you see something in the New Testament that's referring something to it's a hyperlink to the Old Testament. Isn't that a great way to describe it?
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is how you can have Jews that believe in Yeshua. You can have Christians that you can have because it's who he is. You're not just following a dead religion or doing somebody that's telling you something. You're reading scripture and seeing it revealing a person whom he fills out in its entirety.
Yes. So, okay, I'm going to ask you one last question.
Okay.
I always try to keep these real short, but no, this has been wonderful. But can you tell us what, as a homeschool mom especially, some like easy, simple, practical, what's something somebody could go do today to try to incorporate some of these feasts or Old Testament teaching to our kids? What kind of ideas do you have?
Okay, where I started, and it made a huge difference in my family. My husband came to Torah, or I don't know how to say it, but he also came along this journey with me in his own process. But one of the things that really invited him in was Shabbat dinner.
Yes, I love Shabbat dinner.
And challah. Like,
it's the good old carbohydrates. They'll get you in every time.
I started making challah on Friday night. On Friday afternoons. And the house would be so filled with that smell and candles. And I had talked to a rabbi online a while ago, and he told me, if you observe Shabbat, you will not even you will be amazed at the blessings that come into your life. And honestly, Shabbat, it's not, it's a weekly, I feel like it's a simpler one to start with.
Yes.
In terms of meaning and the depth of, but
Right.
that's where I started, and it
That's a
really
great
changed.
idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea because that's a very simple rhythm, and we are commanded to take a Sabbath,
Right.
to have a Shabbat.
And if Jesus, let's just say Jesus comes back on Shabbat, he's not coming on Sunday.
Right.
People, but right, it's his timing. It's his time.
Let me just say, so not everybody knows this, that when Jews around the world celebrate Shabbat, Shabbat begins on Friday night at sundown,
Right.
and it ends and concludes 24 hours later on Saturday, when the sun goes down. And the thing that I like about Shabbat so much is, I think it's John Mark Comer. He's an author, Christian author, who talks a lot about rest and how to do Sabbath and how does that work? And he talks about working out of our rest as opposed to working towards our rest.
Right.
It's just a very different, it's a mind.
It's non-American for sure, but it's godly.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
And even the day, the Shabbat, even the Jewish day, it begins with rest when the sun goes down. And so you're working out of rest.
Exactly.
It's a far superior way of doing it.
Yeah, it's very different than what we do here.
Than what we have to deal with.
Yeah. Jenna, this is a wonderful conversation. And I especially like that you suggested start with Shabbat, learn about Shabbat, and
and it pulls the whole family in. This year, I started teaching the boys one Hebrew letter each time we're at the table. Trying to introduce something each time. You've gathered your family, you've made things, you've lighted a candle, you can learn things, you can memorize scripture, you can put things in on that time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome idea. Jenna, the wooded class. No, wait, what is it?
You got it. The wooded classroom.
Wooded dot classroom. Yeah. Okay, I love it. Well, thanks so much. It's been
we'll
awesome.
do this again. Let's do it again, huh?
I'd love to.
Thank you for being a part of the Links to Messiah podcast family. Your support means the world to us, and your feedback and engagement keep us going strong. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends and family. Let's continue growing this incredible community together. Until next week, keep reading the Bible to your children, keep their curiosity burning, and keep coming back for more tips to anchor your child's faith to Jesus, our Messiah. This is your host, Rachel Links Kushner, signing off with a big smile and a heart full of gratitude.